This is a relay project.
Real Talk starts right now. Here's Ryan Jesperson.
All right, so this is week one of the race to replace Rachel Notley. The race, I guess, to replace Donald Trump. A pretty significant change in a way on the Republican side of the ledger. And the federal Liberals, are they floundering? Is that the fair word to use? These are the three, at least the three things that we're going to hit on with Charles Adler coming up in just a second. You know, he joins us here on Real Talk, the first episode of every week. Plus, we're going to be diving into the Real Talk mailbag, Johnny. There's a few emails that we received over the past couple of weeks to talk@ryanjesperson.com that I have been keeping from you.
Oh, you got some bangers.
Yeah, I wanted to ensure that you did not see them so we could get your reaction to this feedback live on camera. Feel good stuff. Okay. Emails that I thought we'd save for a Monday. Great. So they didn't crack Friday's episode, you know, the flamethrower presented by the DQs of Northwest Edmonton and Sherwood Park. That's where people that are pissed off can say what they need to say. These are the people whose hearts are full. Okay. The people who are seeing the silver lining. So that's coming up on this Monday episode of Real Talk, which wouldn't be happening, quite frankly, with our friends at Rello, who want to remind you that if you're watching everybody else head off to their jobs, build their careers, and love doing it, and you just quite frankly, you can't relate, it might be time to head back to school for a new career. You can do that. Get started in real estate with Rello's affordable online courses that make it super easy for you to pass your exam and get your real estate license, so then you're on your way, setting your own hours, you're your own boss, of course, unlimited earning potential, and you'll be helping people every single day as they buy and sell their homes. Now, why Rello? Well, the best part is how committed they are to your success, including live instructors that host prep sessions for your exam every Saturday. Plus, they've got a lot of resources after graduation. You've passed the exam, you've gotten licensed, Rello's still there for you. And right now, for Real Talkers, an awesome promotion. Knock 20% off the price of any Rello course using the code REALTALK. That's all one word, Real Talk, when you get started at Rello. That's RELO.ca. Charles Adler is an Emmy Award-winning talk radio legend, and we're thrilled to have him join us as we kick off every week here on Real Talk. How you holding up, my man? Have a decent weekend?
Not terrible, not bad at all. As a matter of fact, probably a better weekend that the Liberals had than that retreat you were referring to, or at least you were referring to the headline, are they floundering? And when you're retreating is all about surviving, they definitely feel that they're floundering. There's more data out this morning from someone that you talked to regularly, Mr. Fournier, one of the I guess best people in the country, Philip Fournier, for aggregating the various polls that are out there, and he's now saying that Liberals have gone soft, right in the belly of the beast, meaning right in the Toronto area, even places like Mississauga, which have been voting Liberal for a very long time, big battleground, but generally the Liberals win the battle. Even Mississauga is softening up. My guess is at the moment, the less exposure Pierre Poilievre has, the less people hear him doing all the stuff that works very well for his base, the less visible he is, the better it is for the Conservative movement at the moment.
Yeah, that's not exactly a ringing endorsement of the leader if you suggest that the less you see of him, the better the party's going to get. You can only maintain that for so long, though. I mean, we'll be talking about the American election coming up in just a little bit. That's sooner than the next time Canadians will vote federally or provincially, for that matter. So if you're taking a look at the Conservative strategy right now, what is it? Just build base, build base, build base?
Build base, and basically don't step on the largest message in the land. And the largest message in the land is that the largest political message is that people are tiring of Trudeau. So don't get in the way of that by making them exhausted with you. Pierre Poilievre was exhausting people just a few months ago. Social media message after message. I know that some people love the idea of him, bullying some amateur in an orchard eating his apple and denying reality. I mean, a lot of people who are part of the Conservative base, they love seeing that, but that doesn't necessarily play well in the Mississaugas, in the real battleground. So I'm not saying that Pierre Poilievre won't come out of the rabbit hole from time to time, but at the moment they're playing it low key, and I think low key is working for them. Yes, at some point there's a real campaign, and you can't play low key anymore. You're absolutely right about that. But at the moment, they are trying to get inevitability on the score sheet. And if they can crack 905, they have inevitability. That's a very, very big opponent to any incumbent.
You remember back in 2015 when Justin Trudeau was hoping to knock off Stephen Harper, and just because all I'm doing is paying attention to sports and playoffs right now, I'll say the Liberals heading into that election were the third seed, not even the second. Yeah. And you remember that Justin Trudeau, at least this is my memory of it, owned the narrative on the middle class. He was talking about the middle class the entire time, the entire campaign, and now it feels like Pierre Poilievre's kind of stolen that from him. It feels like if Justin Trudeau starts talking about the middle class again, he's going to have to remind people that they were on his radar 9 years ago.
Well, at the moment, Justin Trudeau is talking about sealing up all of the various minorities that are part of the Liberal coalition. So he's still talking about making sure that LGBT people have protection. He's still talking about how abortion, that women have to have access to abortion. None of that is about the middle class, and all of it is really old news for a lot of people who are in the middle class. But you make the best point in the country right now. If Justin Trudeau is no longer the savior for the middle class, the protector and defender of the middle class, then Justin Trudeau cannot ever be what he was a number of years ago. It's one thing to say that the apple isn't the apple is far from the tree and it's rotting and it's decaying, and whatever cartoons you want to come up with to write a column with or to make a point. All of that is interesting. His best buy date is past, blah, 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 blah. But the most important point is the one you're making. If you're no longer identifying with the middle class, if that's not who you're championing, if you're not fighting for the middle class, you're SOL. You're somewhat out of luck.
You can't somewhat. You can't as a government. You can't immediately and completely effectively slow inflation and drop interest rates, but you also can't say that. You can't say, well, what do you want us to do? It's not our. You got to do something, and they better do something because that's probably their biggest problem right now.
Well, I mean, that's why at this retreat, they brought in experts to talk to them about the middle class. But the reason they're doing that is because they are aware, there are people inside the party who are aware they're losing touch with the middle class. And so they're trying to find a way, even though they can't change the interest rates unilaterally, they can't change inflation unilaterally. No government can do that just like that. They can find ways of talking about it and sound like they're empathetic with it. They can't just say that other people, meaning the Conservatives, are taking advantage of your fears. That's okay for a pundit to say. You can say it, I can say it. But that's not what a leader says. A leader cannot be a pundit. A leader has to lead. And that means inspiring. And you cannot inspire people unless they feel that you care about them.
Chuck, it's going to be interesting. This comment caught my attention in our live chat. Jason says, I'll be stunned if Trudeau doesn't connect how the middle class of Alberta is struggling under a Conservative government. It's an interesting point. I don't know that Justin Trudeau's ever really wanted to kind of like shine a light on Alberta in a negative way, or have Alberta or Alberta Conservative come across as a pejorative in any sense. Could you see him doing that? And also, is it? Wow, gosh, am I about to step in one right now by saying this? But is the middle class in Alberta struggling more than like the lower income earner? In Alberta, it seems like the issues mirror the issues across the country. You look at what's really happening, the affordability crisis, of course, the housing availability crisis, the opioid crisis. There are people out of work, but that's not limited to just Alberta. I don't know if there's one thing, respectfully to Jason, that you could point at and say, this is because of Danielle Smith. I mean, unless it's sort of a niche issue, maybe somebody working in solar farm construction, you could, but not generally speaking, I don't think.
But you can't. Justin Trudeau can't pick on provincial Conservative parties because Justin Trudeau leads the national government. I don't want to get into an argument with people like Preston Manning.
Or does he?
Yeah. No, I'm sorry. It's not the national government. It's a federal government, and we're a federation. I don't want to get into those policy weeds. The point is, it's all about perceptions, and I deal with perceptions because perceptions are where the votes live. So the perception is that Justin Trudeau leads this great big national government, and the perception is the national government is so much larger than the junior partners, the provincial government. So for the big guy, I too am into sports all the time, just as you are. And for Connor McDavid to point fingers at someone on the fourth line, I realize right now nobody's pointing fingers at any of the lines because the Edmonton Oilers have just actually beaten the Montreal Canadiens for games in a row. But just hang with me on this one. You can't be the big guy on the team and start blaming the little guys for the problems that the big guy is perceived to be responsible for. Justin Trudeau can't lay this off on Doug Ford or Danielle Smith or anyone else. Justin Trudeau has to be Captain Canada.
I love this from Chris in the chat. Says, wait, what? We have a middle class? And then he wraps that up with an LOL. We never know when people are going to listen to these episodes, so we'll point out the timing of this. We're talking a couple of days after the Edmonton Oilers won their 13th straight. They're the first Canadian team to ever do it. This surprised me. We'll get back to politics in a second. The 19th team to do it in NHL history, but a Canadian team had never done it before, which is really, really interesting to see. They're 4 or 5 games away from setting the all-time record. Tying it would be 17 in a row, I think, off the top of my head, but it's a big one. Also, over the weekend, the Edmonton Oilers signing Corey Perry, who many people will remember saw a very unusual circumstance. His contract terminated by the Chicago Blackhawks for what they called unacceptable conduct. Nobody really knows what happened there. The Oilers haven't been afraid to bring in a perceived troublemaker to the room before.
They brought in Evander Kane.
Yeah.
There are days when I just lose it. I can't stand seeing some of the things that Evander Kane does. But pound for pound, there are few people in the world with more talent, innate talent than Evander Kane. And I think Connor McDavid is the guy who stood up for him. I think without Connor McDavid, without his blessing, his influence, whatever you want to call it, I don't think Evander Kane would be in an Oilers uniform.
I agree.
Right now.
Do you remember?
Nobody could convince me that Evander Kane isn't a great big positive for the Oilers.
100%. Johnny, when Johnny, you and I were both still working for the team, you remember they brought in Zach Cassian.
Of course.
And at that time, he was like fresh off a DUI, and he had a lot of issues. And Edmonton, he kind of found an opportunity to get back on track.
And good for them if they come over. It's kind of like an island of misfit toys, the Oilers lately. But like there were some things with Kane, even though he wasn't charged with anything, that were, some of that stuff that from eyewitness accounts in the bars and stuff.
Alleged abuse of women.
Yeah,
stuff like that.
grabbing people by the neck, fighting bouncers. But I mean, anyone can turn around, get help, and change. I believe that. But it is weird that the Oilers always pick up these guys right when they're in the shit end of their
but you look at Corey Perry, and like my thing with Perry is that I know it's not a sports show, but Corey Perry, he's a Stanley Cup champion, he's an Art Ross Trophy winner, so he's been the league's top scorer. That was like 1,000 years ago, but he's been to several Stanley Cup finals. He knows how to win. He knows how to be a pro. He's going to cost them like $300,000. They can healthy scratch him. Mm-hmm. I want to go on the record and say it.
Do it.
I see Corey Perry scoring a big goal this playoff run. I think it's going to be a significant one. I don't know if it's going to be a series win. I don't know what, Chuck, but I see Corey Perry making a difference for Edmonton.
Ryan, at the risk of people thinking I'm not as good a human being as they hoped I was, here's the deal, okay? Hockey's a blood sport, okay? Hockey's a different animal. And I have always believed that a hockey team that is smart enough to hire, recruit bad boys with something to prove is a whip-smart hockey team.
Okay. The one thing I don't like is that we still don't know, and maybe hockey insiders do.
Did.
Yeah. So, I mean, they must, but somebody on the inside must know. You'd never sign a guy unless you know exactly what happened. And I'm sure the insiders, even though Elliot Friedman doesn't know yet, I'm sure
he says he does.
I'm sure a GM and another GM, when they talk about this, they know what's been done. But when it does come out, who knows if we think it's bad enough or wasn't.
Yeah, I mean, the Chicago Blackhawks with the Kyle Beach situation, they have to be people are expecting them to be even more proactive than the average team on addressing issues of misconduct within the organization. So you never know. The point is, here he is in Edmonton, and so we move forward. Let's bring this back to politics. James says, you want to take a look at Alberta and how not everything's thriving. under current government, conservative government in Alberta. James says we've got the worst insurance rates. We've got the worst electricity rates. He says, and on and on. He says we are the model of a free market run amok. That's an interesting point that James makes. You could look to previous premiers as well, and it's true, Chuck. Nobody's seen skyrocketing utility rates more than Albertans have. Insurance rates are out of control. There are some issues here. There's no doubt about that. It kind of begs the question on what's the next Alberta NDP leader going to do, and what's that winning strategy going to be for whoever replaces Rachel Notley. Hang tight, Chuck. 30 seconds. Charles Adler coming up. But first, Rachel Notley, as you know, last week resigning or saying that she will resign as leader of Alberta's NDP. Upon the culmination of that leadership race, she'll step aside. She's not gone quite yet. And here's a tiny little bit of what she had to say and how she said it.
We approved and built the Calgary Cancer Centre, a decision that was at least a decade overdue. We stood up for the rights of working people, improving their access to unions, increasing their time off, protecting their safety in the workplace. And we were the first jurisdiction in North America to raise the minimum wage to $15 per hour, making a real difference in the life of Alberta's working poor and tens of thousands of young families. We secured Alberta's first pipeline to Tidewater in over 50 years, ensuring that the return to Albertans for the sale of the resources we all own is permanently increased. We eliminated coal-fired electricity in Alberta, thereby increasing the health of countless citizens, and at the same time kickstarting our renewable energy industry to be the fastest growing on the continent, all while significantly reducing our emissions in one fell swoop. And finally, in the midst of a recession caused by the international collapse in the price of oil, seriously folks, I didn't cause that, we cut child poverty in half. But as I said, we didn't get it all right, and Albertans told us so in April of 2019.
So that was Rachel Notley as she said goodbye, essentially. Her swan song as leader of Alberta's NDP. How did it resonate with you?
Look, I put everything right in the shop window for you. I've voted conservative for almost every year of my adult life, so I don't want to pretend that I haven't voted that way. But I endorsed Rachel Notley on New Year's Eve, just a few months before the April vote, this most recent April vote. And I endorsed her because I think she's got character. I think her leadership character is far better than the alternative. Of course, the alternative won. And I think that I was a sucker for the Notley brand when I was at the University of Calgary back in the 70s. I admired Grant Notley. I admire the Notley brand, which to me is really, really hard work. I'm a sucker for people who work their asses off. And I'm a sucker for people who understand something about democracy, whether it's democracy in Canada, the United States, Britain, or anywhere else. The only way to have democracy survive and thrive is to not have chaos. Rachel Notley is not about the chaos, and that's not what the Notley brand is all about. And yes, it is about having a conscience. It is about having a moral conscience, a personal conscience, and yes, a social conscience. And yes, I'm one of these small C conservatives who believes that the best way for us to have a social safety net, the best way for us to have the best hospitals, and yes, the lowest possible utility rates, and all of that is for us to have a thriving private sector. And that private sector is thriving because small businesses are thriving. I have never sucked up to large corporations who want to form oligopolies to make sure that your insurance rates and your utility rates are high. And I believe that if the NDP, which is essentially becoming in Alberta a coalition of all parties who are center and center left, if they focus like a laser on making sure that small business has the best possible opportunity in Alberta, I think the NDP has a chance, and I think Rachel Notley has laid the groundwork for that.
It's going to be like, and we've talked about this quite a bit on the show last week, and people can check out our panels. And it was really neat to get Mark McQuaig-Boyd in the house, former energy minister, talking. She's known Rachel since she was 12, telling the story of what it was like to be invited into her cabinet. Leah Ward joins us as well, her former senior advisor, and Erica Brudies gave us kind of the conservative perspective on it. And of course, Erica would like to see the leadership race as an absolute disaster, obviously. But you've you've got some people. None of them have declared yet, of course. That'll happen in weeks and months to come. But a real opportunity for the party, as leadership races do, just look at what Pierre Poilievre did for the federal Conservatives, to infuse fundraising and interest and membership sales and like put a new stamp on the party and breathe some life into the party. You also, though, run a risk. Probably as the federal NDs did with Jack Layton after the fact, of when the personality is almost, I mean, Rachel wouldn't want me to say this, but like almost bigger than the brand. When the person is the brand and has been the brand for like 10 years, leadership race is kind of an interesting scenario. It's an interesting situation, and you wonder, do they build membership and build fundraising as a result of this, or do some people that were kind of like the so-called Notley crew maybe drop off a little bit to a party that they see as moving in a different direction, not as left as they'd want it to be or as it once was?
The party can't move to the left. The party has to stay as close to the center as possible, and I'll say it. I don't care if it sounds like an absolute, sounds like a commandment. They need someone from Calgary, and they need someone who's not connected to the union movement. With all due respect, I come from blue collar roots, and if it hadn't been for the Ladies Garment Workers Union, we would have starved. So I get no kicks out of saying what I've just said. The person has to be from Calgary, and the person can't be directly connected to the union movement, because I know what it's like to work for the other side. If you're from the Edmonton area and you're part of the union movement, I can whack you all day long. I'm not saying that Danielle Smith's particularly good at it. I don't think she's good at it. I don't think some of her colleagues are that good at it, but they're good enough to get that done. And by the way, I know that Parker behaves himself on your show, but Parker just posted this piece about the superiority of white culture.
What?
Is that not something that we need to talk about?
Where is it, on Twitter? I'll call it up as we speak.
Yeah, it's on Twitter, and it was retweeted last night by a number of people. How proud he is of white culture. I mean, there's nothing, as a white person, as a Caucasian, okay, there's nothing that nails me, that upsets me more than this ridiculous concept of white superiority or white supremacy. White superiority is an oxymoron. The idea that Caucasians are superior to Asians is nonsense. That's proven every single day, right in your own backyard, Ryan, right there. How do you look an Asian in the eye and say, I, Ryan Jesperson, a Caucasian, am superior to you? It's nonsense. It's an oxymoron. And the people touting this the most, pushing this the most, are the ones who prove every single day that it's an oxymoron.
We're doing this. People know we record this live, and so I don't know if he deleted it or what.
It was retweeted last night by our friend Nate.
All right. Okay.
Nate the paramedic.
Oh, Nate the paramedic. Okay,
the paramedic.
Nate the paramedic, the guy behind the breakdown, who does a really great job. He deserves credit there. Okay, well, I'll somebody send it to me. I'll take a look, and obviously we'll follow up. But I haven't seen it. Yeah, David Parker. I mean, yeah, he came on the show. He behaved himself. The one thing I've told you that with Parker is you never know. Like the whole thing about he comes on the show. I think we did a fair interview. I probably should have, and I've said this to you before. The one question I should have asked him that I didn't ask him is why are you behaving yourself? That was probably the obvious question that everybody was wondering, because he came across as relatively reasonable. But then after the fact,
I've said 1,000 times about the David Parkers of the world. Okay, that just because they're selling crazy doesn't mean they're stupid. I'm never going to call David Parker a stupid person. But it's this business of the superiority or supremacy of white culture is out of line. Now, am I expecting that Danielle Smith will someday call him on that? Of course not. I mean, how can she? She's going to be on stage with Tucker Carlson, and Tucker Carlson sells that product. He sells it more effectively than David Parker, but that's what Tucker Carlson sells all day long. The idea that the white culture is superior, and a lot of people love him for that. And I'm not saying that Danielle Smith loves him for that. Danielle Smith probably just wants to be on the same stage with him because he's a conservative rock star. But there's no way that Danielle Smith would have any cred nailing David Parker for his white supremacy piece when she's going to be taking the stage with Tucker Carlson.
Okay, so Johnny's found the tweet. Is this the tweet from December 16th?
No, I just threw one up.
That's just another tweet.
Yeah.
Okay,
Which is just
so December 6th. What did he tweet December 16th? White people are awesome and I love being white.
Yes.
Okay, all right. I mean, sure, man. Yeah, something. Have we already spent too much time talking about David Parker on this morning? I don't know.
Probably.
I mean, people.
Probably.
Other people said to me when we had the interview, oh, you're platforming him. You're platforming him, and I sit there going, he's got the platform, dude. I think more people probably need to know what this guy's all about. And what does he say on the show right away? He says we're coming for school boards. I said that's probably a pretty valuable perspective check for people to have. But people getting upset about the platforming and the platforming.
Didn't he just lose the battle for a school board in Westlock?
Yeah, well, Westlock's been an interesting case study the entire time. Town council getting to the point where they've got to vote on pride-painted crosswalks, and there's kind of an interesting angle to that story. And Westlock, I think a lot of the elected officials and the citizens in Westlock deserve a lot of credit for keeping that place, pointed in the right direction despite some serious adversity. It's a relatively small community for people that don't know northwest of Edmonton. Wonderful people in Westlock for the most part, as you would say about anywhere. And I haven't seen the latest Parker stuff. He certainly came for this show. I don't know if you saw, but he sort of dragged his wife into this. Did you see this, Charles? His wife hosts a show, and he started talking about how her show is more important than ours, and we're a niche market, and this and the other. And he set it up. Johnny and I had a quick chat about it.
Our show?
Yeah. And he sits there and he starts talking about how Real Talk's like a niche liberal, nobody audience kind of thing.
Yeah, that's why I'm here, because I'm a niche liberal.
But he's setting me up to the guy's like picking a fight on his wife's behalf with me. Well, I don't want to fight with Parker's wife. I don't have any beef with Parker's wife. I feel sorry for her, but I don't have a beef with her. So anyway, so he apparently, but I appreciate him making time for our niche liberal talk show, which is great. Just like the Prime Minister and all the premiers do, and the CEOs as well. Everybody making time for the niche liberal talk show.
Pardon me, I don't want to lather up the host here, but I just need to say something, because you never know who's tuning in when. There is no mainstream Alberta talk show, mainstream, down the middle, normal, than Real Talk with Ryan Jesperson.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Chuck. Why don't we turn our attention in just a second to what's happening stateside, because I want to this ties back to Trudeau as well, and to Poilievre and everybody else. If Donald Trump is the next president again, then there are complications and there are major ramifications for whoever will be Canada's prime minister for the duration of Trump's term, and a bit of a shakeup in the race. Everybody knows at this point DeSantis is out, but it's the way that he went out and what he said that's grabbing some people's attention. That's coming up in just a quick second. First, I wanted to let you know that this episode of Real Talk is happening with the support of Athabasca University, because they want you to know that they've got world-class accredited online degrees and courses designed so you can complete your education wherever and whenever it works for you. Your only commute is to your device. It's never been more convenient to get that undergrad degree, maybe an MBA. Maybe you just want to level up and take a micro course on something like AI or human resources, or whatever the field is that you're interested in. We encourage you to select your path after taking a couple seconds to examine the advantages of Athabasca University. You can find them online today at athabascau.ca. That's where you'll see the AU advantage. Our friends at Eden Landscaping want to remind you that everything we saw this summer, the floods, the wildfires, nobody's been talking about climate change more than this past summer, right? We still see ramifications of that, and we know that things will continue to change, including the field of landscape design. The team at Eden Landscaping has been leveling up their knowledge year after year after year to ensure that their clients are getting the most up-to-date, most modern, most informed design principles. And that includes how water is being used. It includes some of the plants that you're putting in. It includes the physical design as well as the concepts behind it. The team at Eden is great listeners, and we recommend you work with them by starting with a visit to landscapeedmonton.ca. Check out their portfolio. You can get started with a quick note on the website. And our friends at Friesen Brothers, we're talking about affordability. We're talking about how Canadians are trying to stretch dollars more than ever before. Friesen Brothers, they're looking out for you on at least a couple of fronts. They've got seniors discount days. Different days of the week at the different locations, 16 of them across Alberta. So check out their website for more details. That's friesen.com. Plus, the first of every month, 15% off all purchases over $75. That goes a long way. And then don't forget, under the flyer link, they've got that Family Essentials flyer that we love. You can view it online or find it in store. Friesen Brothers always focused on family. It's why they give you recipe ideas, videos on how to prepare them, plus that Smart Shopper Savings program that you can find. Sign up to get it emailed to you every single week. That's Friesen Brothers. Family grown, Alberta grown, and Alberta owned.
I found the David Parker tweet. Just give me 1 second.
All right, let's take a look at it. I want to see it. We have talked enough about David Parker, but I want to see this tweet because I haven't seen it. And we don't get to do this often live.
We haven't talked enough about David Parker's wife, who you feel sorry for.
I'm not looking to pick a fight with Parker's wife. He obviously wants me to pick a fight with her, but I don't think I want to do it. So we're going to get that.
I know you don't want to be Corey Perry. You don't want to be Evander Kane. But sometimes you got to mix it up, especially when the game's on the line.
I'll mix it up. Yeah. I mean, if I feel like it's worth my time. But you know what they also say, about rolling around and wrestling with pigs, Chuck. You end up doing it.
The pig gets off. And
the pig gets off and you wind up covered in shit.
The tweet reads, he's posting a poster from the States which talks about white culture. And he says, after reading this poster, I've determined that whiteness is awesome.
I see.
And basically it gives a bunch of reasons.
Okay, like what are some of the reasons? Like
Protestant work ethic, emphasis on scientific method, rugged individualism, and then there's a bunch of bullet points under each one.
Okay. All right. I'm never mind. I've never met a rugged individualist that wasn't white. Like, jeez.
And only whites are into science.
Yeah. I mean, everything that's about to come out of my mouth right now is just not worth it. So let's look stateside.
I'll give you an apology. It caught my eye.
I'm glad you brought it up.
Eye last night, and I brought it to the dance.
I'm glad you brought it to the dance. I'm glad Johnny tracked it down, and now we're all leveled up on understanding yet another reason why, and here's the thing, though. I was about to say why the guy should not be taken seriously. That's not true, because we don't bring people on this talk show that should not be taken seriously. Unless I'm talking to a comedian. He should be taken deadly seriously.
If I didn't think he was an influencer.
Yeah.
And if I didn't think he was a massive influencer with the UCP, I would never mention him.
Yeah.
He's not just some crackpot who might have called my talk show and the producer might have told him Chuck's getting real tired of it. He's not into crackpots. He's not one of those guys. He actually has influence. No matter what we say about him and no matter what we talk about his posts, he has influence. So, yes, we have to take him seriously.
Last time you and I spoke, it was the Iowa caucuses, and I think I would say we called it because everybody knew what was going to happen. It was all but a Trump sweep. DeSantis with kind of like a little blip, a little glimmer of hope, but not really at all. And after a few days to think about it, Ron DeSantis releases this over the weekend.
Now, following our second place finish in Iowa, we've prayed and deliberated on the way forward. If there was anything I could do to produce a favorable outcome, more campaign stops, more interviews, I would do it. But I can't ask our supporters to volunteer their time and donate their resources if we don't have a clear path to victory. Accordingly, I am today suspending my campaign. I'm proud to have delivered on 100% of my promises, and I will not stop now. It's clear to me that a majority of Republican primary voters want to give Donald Trump another chance. They watch his presidency get stymied by relentless resistance, and they see Democrats using lawfare this day to attack him. Well, I've had disagreements with Donald Trump, such as on the coronavirus pandemic and his elevation of Anthony Fauci. Trump is superior to the current incumbent, Joe Biden. That is clear. I signed a pledge to support the Republican nominee, and I will honor that pledge. He has my endorsement because we can't go back to the old Republican guard of yesteryear, a repackaged form of warmed-over corporatism that Nikki Haley represents. The days of putting Americans last, of kowtowing to large corporations, of caving to woke ideology are over.
So that is Ron DeSantis saying he's out and endorsing Donald Trump. Over to you, Charles.
His problem, I guess, with Donald Trump was that Donald Trump took the coronavirus too seriously and elevated Dr. Fauci. So Ron DeSantis is a white guy. If David Parker or Mrs. Parker is listening, David, I need you to know that Ron DeSantis is a white guy who is against the scientific method.
Yeah, there you go. Well, and also, I don't think a lot of people know this because it wasn't widely reported, but I appreciate the Twitter account T-Pain USA for releasing this information. Charles, I don't even know if you knew this, but Ron DeSantis actually had to travel out of state to abort his campaign.
So Ron DeSantis wanted to say that he didn't want his donors, to be disappointed. Well, the point is the donations ran out after Ron DeSantis campaigned in all 99 Iowa counties and lost every single one of them to Donald Trump. And after it was obvious by his own internal polls that Ron DeSantis was going to finish in single digits at best, he might have had trouble getting even 5 points in New Hampshire. So if you lose Iowa and you lose New Hampshire, you're not going into South Carolina with momentum. You're going to get absolutely creamed. You're going to get toasted in South Carolina. So where is Ron DeSantis in his life? He's trying to survive, okay? Just like the Liberals are on a retreat. We're on a retreat this weekend because it was about survival. Ron DeSantis retreated, got out of the race with Donald Trump because he wants to survive. And even though he has disparaged over the last few months Republicans who kiss Donald Trump's ring, he is now kissing the ring. Why? Because he's timed out. Okay, he can't run anymore as Florida governor. They've got term limits over there, so he's got two avenues to go down. One would be to run for the Senate in Florida. Obviously, he'd run as a Republican. He gets absolutely creamed if Donald Trump doesn't endorse him, so he needs to kiss the ring to get the endorsement from Donald Trump. Regardless of whether or not Donald Trump wins the presidency, Donald Trump is still going to be the top Republican dog for a long time. So Ron DeSantis needs Donald Trump's endorsement to survive as a politician, to run for the Senate, and possibly Ron DeSantis wants to be in Donald Trump's cabinet, possibly as a Secretary of Defense or maybe a Secretary of Health. But the point is, Donald Trump is being kissed by DeSantis right now so that DeSantis can survive. And whether or not Trump appreciates him or throws him overboard, who knows? The idea that you can count on Donald Trump's support for even 5 minutes is absurd. But Ron DeSantis is now a very, very desperate man.
Yeah, I mean, it's wild to see. It's always, I mean, and I understand kind of how politics work as much as you can if you've never been in it. But, you've got to, we joked about this the last week, talking about any leadership race for any party, that it's amazing to watch because you get people talking about why the other candidates are so completely lousy. And then one of the candidates wins, and then everybody talks about how great that candidate is because they try to win favor back. It's always an interesting exercise, right? But I want to give credit to New York Magazine here. This was updated in June of this year by Margaret Hartman. It's Donald Trump's nasty Ron DeSantis nicknames ranked. Nobody's been more mean to Ron DeSantis than Donald Trump, right? So you got Meatball Ron, you got Disaster. I thought Ron Disaster was pretty good. He calls him Rob DeSantis. He called him Tiny D, which no guy wants to be called Tiny D. Ron De-establishment, shut down Ron, a reference to the restrictions the governor put in place at the beginning of the coronavirus pandemic. Ron dishonest, DeSoros, reference, of course, to George Soros. Ron DeSanctimonious, which might be my personal favorite, and then Ron DeSanctus, maybe as she writes, because Ron DeSanctimonious was getting too long to type. So that's his top 10 DeSantis insults ranked by New York Magazine. It's not
Trump
exactly
also
been
talks about he likes people in high heels, but not so much with Ron DeSantis. Ron DeSantis wears lifts. I think he lifts 3 inches, whatever, because I think he's 5'7" or 5'8", and he wants to be a 6-footer. And of course, Donald Trump, who will always tell you that he's 6'2.5" or 6'3", will always be happy to call Ron DeSantis tiny and make fun of what he calls
I'm the healthiest man alive.
And all that stuff works big time with the so-called base. They love to hear Donald Trump taking shots at his opponents, and the idea that after being called all those names, Ron DeSantis is now kissing up to Donald Trump. People go, "What's that about?" But listen, Ted Cruz took much more incoming from Donald Trump than that. I mean, at least Donald Trump never accused Ron DeSantis' father of killing John F. Kennedy, which is what Ted Cruz got. And then Ted Cruz's wife also got, a lot of heat from Donald Trump, called her ugly. And after calling his father a murderer and calling his wife ugly, Ted Cruz kissed Donald Trump's ring.
Yeah. I had forgotten about that one. And there's so much material to work with and so much to remember. Like if any other, major, like a global celebrity, like a world leader, if any other major individual like that had ever made a single comment like that, you would remember it for years. But with Trump, it's just like, it's kind of part of the strategy, I think, is just keep it going, keep the toilet running,
Listen, it guarantees him what we're doing right now. It guarantees him that we're talking about him.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that people sometimes, especially in our own business, have a hard time understanding that when guys like you and me are disparaging somebody, there are a whole lot of guys who go, I want to support the guys that Chuck and Ryan don't support. It's just the way of the world.
Yeah. Hey, it's going to be an interesting week. Danielle Smith, Premier of Alberta, will appear on stage twice with Tucker Carlson at a lunch down in Calgary, and then in Edmonton at a marquee evening event at Rogers Place. We talked about it on January 16th. If people want to check out that episode, I thought it was an excellent conversation with Matthew Hayes, a journalism instructor, and Peter McCaffrey, founder of the Alberta Institute. Hayes arguing, hell no, she should not. Peter doing his best to argue, yes, she should. I suspect that the Premier's advisors don't think it's the greatest idea, but you and I and most people understand why she's doing it. Well, what are your thoughts on Danielle Smith hobnobbing with Tucker Carlson?
I think Danielle Smith sees herself as a star of the right wing. I think Danielle Smith wants to be taken seriously by the Tucker Carlsons of the world, the American right wing, as one of them, as a rising right-wing rock star in the right-wing movement, the MAGA movement, as some people call it. And I think that's what Danielle Smith's motivation is. I don't think that she's doing this to get votes in Alberta. I think she wants to ingratiate herself to the right, and I think it'll be a love-in. And I think Tucker Carlson will treat Danielle Smith as if she's the Canadian version of Viktor Orban. It wouldn't surprise me to see Tucker Carlson saying that he hopes that Danielle Smith will be the Prime Minister of Canada someday.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what they touch on. I think obviously they'll talk oil and gas. I think that so-called trans issues will come up. I think people can probably expect at some point the Alberta government to do something about that. New Brunswick has under Premier Higgs, Saskatchewan has under Premier Moe. You can't expect Alberta to stay out of that fray, and for that matter, to not maybe take it a step further. I think Alberta probably will make a statement on that in the next, weeks or months. So I would expect that would come up. Tucker Carlson, I don't know if he's promised to play nice or not, or the terms under which the Premier's office agreed for her to do this. He has the opportunity, and there's the potential there for him to put her in a really tough spot, right? Like you've got Brett Wilson up on stage there who's talked about hanging Justin Trudeau for treason. You'll have Conrad Black up on stage, who will come across as probably the most reasonable of the group. And then you got Rex Murphy's that's going to be there too. So it's kind of like it'll be it's going to be very, very friendly territory for Alberta's Premier. There's no doubt about that. But I would say that she'll probably have to tread carefully because, one or two sentences in the wrong direction on that stage, and she creates a real problem for herself that lasts way longer than the end of that show.
Do you honestly think that Danielle Smith is opposed to being talked about in a controversial way?
No.
I mean, do you honestly think that when she comes out of this right-wing Woodstock, which is what it is, which will have a lot of people watching, not just in Alberta, but all over the country, and maybe some in the United States as well. Do you honestly think that Danielle Smith won't look at it, regardless of what kinds of quotes or comments or clips end up on blogs and a newscast for a while? Do you honestly think that Danielle Smith doesn't see this as having a net positive for her as a right-wing worldwide celebrity?
Yeah. I mean, and because you're talking about global and worldwide, you're right. I mean, if you look at the comments that's gotten her in most trouble to this point, they're all comments about things like science and medicine and health and all that kind of stuff. And you get Tucker Carlson, who we were playing some of his clips during our January 16th episode. People can check it out. I recommend you do. It was a really great show. And I mean, stuff where he's talking about, I mean, the conspiracy theories behind COVID vaccines and things like are just bonkers.
Well, he's another white guy that doesn't practice the scientific method. I mean,
there's at least two of them on planet Earth.
He made a lot of money on that.
Yeah, he did. Made $20 million annually or whatever it is.
And Danielle Smith is not opposed to living in an alternate universe. And by hitching her wagon to Tucker Carlson's star, she hitches it to Elon Musk's star. Don't be surprised if after this right-wing Woodstock taking place in Alberta, where Danielle Smith will be seen as a star, don't be surprised if Elon Musk says rather positive things about Danielle Smith. That's not going to feel like a wounding experience for her.
Yeah, I remember. I don't know if Elon ever replied to her. I'm checking this on the fly, but I remember she had reached out to him about Starlink, talking about how Alberta had obviously high-speed internet, reliable high-speed internet is still evading many people in rural Alberta, and the premier had tweeted something at Elon Musk like, hey Elon, we might need to partner with you on Starlink or something like that, and obviously kind of, I think, fishing for a response, and I don't know if she got it or not. I don't think so. I'm sure that there would have been real buzz if he had reached out to the premier. But yeah, I mean, I get it. Listen, I get why she's doing it. Like, obviously Tucker Carlson, would you agree he's the biggest name in right-wing commentary in the world, like, isn't he? I mean, he's top 3 anyway.
He is, and most important, he's partnered with Elon Musk. Say whatever you want about Elon Musk. Say whatever you want about what damage he may have done to Twitter. Elon Musk is the world's richest human being. Elon Musk is a great friend of the right, partnered with Tucker Carlson. I really see Danielle Smith as seeing this as a no-lose. And the ego of Danielle Smith is bigger than Alberta. And so if she gets into a little bit of trouble for a couple of news cycles in Alberta, small price to pay.
Yeah, here's that tweet, by the way, Johnny. June 27th she says, hey, Elon Musk, I'm running to be Premier of Alberta. We still value free speech here. Could Alberta set up an independent ISP using Starlink to bypass the new Justin Trudeau internet censorship law? Unfortunately for the Premier, while it saw a lot of likes and a lot of retweets, no response from Elon Musk.
I can't believe a powerful woman like Danielle Smith isn't bothered by the misogyny comments by Tucker Carlson. I can't. We still have that clip we never played. If you want to,
go to it. Why don't we fire it?
That he just. I mean, it's pretty sexist.
It'll
what
speak
you're
for
hearing
itself.
For him. Here it is.
You know what? In my brief experience, what gets women going is arguing with them.
Really?
Yeah.
Brad, I never use that.
It's true. You debate politics with a woman and just go, just full blown out there, especially feminism. If you're talking to a feminist and she's giving you, men really need to be more sensitive and this. No, actually, men don't need to be more sensitive. You just need to be quiet and kind of do what you're told.
And lighten up a little bit, bitch.
They love it.
That was Tucker Carlson years ago on the air with Bubba the Love Sponge, a popular shock jock with an audience in the millions.
You're taking me back
though.
to a previous life. Yeah, Bubba the Love Sponge.
And we'll credit
the best in the business.
Media Matters has done some good reporting on that. And Tucker Carlson to this day has refused to apologize for those. It gets worse, by the way. There's lots of C-bombs in there, and he starts talking about people's daughters, and we cut that part out. But to let you know, that's not as bad as it gets.
Well, I mean, Danielle Smith is going to do what she always does about that. If people challenge her about how, you're on stage with a person who has said a number of things, she'll say she's open-minded. She is open to all people, and just because he has said a number of things doesn't mean that she supports those things. she can whack that right out of the park. That's easy money for Danielle Smith.
100%. People had asked about ticket sales. Looks like there's, I don't know. I'm surprised. Tucker Carlson, or TC Events, that's his event company, had booked. Here we are just doing a big ad for them. But they had booked, Chuck, I can't remember the venue. Did you hear, Johnny, in Edmonton? It was like a 1,000-seat or 1,500-seat venue, and then I guess it sold out in like a second. So then they just went straight to Rogers Place. And so now, obviously, selling that venue out is a big deal, even with the curtains and the stage and everything. I've heard that sellouts for most rock bands are in the 14,000 range. So, he's still got lots of tickets available, but then again, if you're going to sell 10,000, that's still a lot. Looks like the tickets in the seats are about $168 a pop, and if you want to sit on the floor, they're $278, $299, $300. So, yeah, it seems everything's $300 now, though. You want to go to a concert, it's $300. Crazy. But there you have it. He'll make a pretty penny coming up here, that's for sure.
He'll make money. It'll be seen as a big event, and I just don't see it as anything but a net positive for Danielle Smith's number one quest, and that is to be a worldwide right-wing political superstar.
Sharon's got some good advice for us here. She says, never get into a pissing match with a skunk. Pretty good. Although I don't think it's technically piss that stinks with skunks, but I'll take your point, Sharon. And Tony also had a great remark in the live chat this morning on YouTube. She says the best tweet that she's seen about Ron DeSantis is that he should be forced to carry his campaign to term, which I think is very good as well. Charles Adler joins us, the first episode of every week.
You were right. You were right about a lot of things in the last couple of shows, and one of the things you were most right about is Ron DeSantis started going downhill in the imagination of human beings when he took on Mickey Mouse. Mm-hmm. That was a Mickey Mouse thing to do for a guy who wants to be commander-in-chief and president of the free world. That was a very dumb move, and that is where people went, wait a minute.
Yeah, number one, you're picking a fight with Disney, one of the most beloved, respected, and prosperous brands in the world, and also they're the biggest employer in Florida. So, on two fronts. Number one, the sort of playing on people's emotions. And then on the other front, just as a business move in the business of politics, stupid as well. So we'll see.
They're the ones who gave my generation Old Yeller. And I know we're plumb out of time here, but someday maybe you'll run a clip of Old Yeller.
We're never out of time to talk about Old Yeller. Johnny, did you grow up watching Old Yeller? Or are you a little too young?
No, I remember Old Yeller, and I remember the Andy Griffith Show, and all those. Those were I'd watch those if I wasn't watching, Kids Street or other shows at lunchtime. But yeah,
here you go.
You got the Old Yeller clip.
For those of you watching on YouTube, if you know me, you know that Old Yeller is never too far away. I'm feeling it right now, the emotions of my youth coming back as I'm watching this video of the beloved pup. One of the most messed up endings of any movie I've ever seen, but I digress.
There was a time, Ryan, I don't want to get into the context for this, but there was a time when my dad commanded me not to cry, okay? We'll talk about that some other day. But I was allowed to cry during Old Yeller.
There you go. I like it. To give you an idea, I grew up in a family where my parents wanted to reiterate to us the value of every dollar all the time. And in a day and age where you still had to pay not just to rent the movie, but to rent the VCR as well, we still campaigned heavily to rent Old Yeller again and again and again.
Walt Disney gave us Old Yeller. Ron DeSantis was stupid enough to try to step on Disney. And when he stepped in it, he shit the bed.
Nobody can match Charles Adler. That's why we bring it back every single week. Much love to you, pal. We'll talk to you again soon.
I love you. I love Johnny. And I love Albertans even more than Danielle Smith.
Oh, wow. Well, you don't have to stack him up. Good to see you, pal. We'll see you again in a week. That's Charles Adler. You can follow him online at Charles Adler on Twitter. And, of course, subscribe to the Charles Adler podcast. There you go.
Always a time with the talk radio legend.
Did you are you super familiar with Old Yeller?
I just remember.
Do you remember the story arc?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
And then he dies. And am I giving it away? Spoiler alert. Old Yeller dies.
I don't think you have to give, because what year did that come out? I don't think you have to give spoiler alerts, but Old Yeller IMDb, that film came out in 1957. So, wow. There you go. I see it happening.
Yeah, I made a mistake.
that
I was talking
staying
about
power.
Lassie that I would watch during lunch hours sometimes because Old Yeller was a movie. Lassie was the show.
Yeah, you
that,
you come back from lunch with just a tear-stained face and swollen red eyes every day. What happened? I was watching Old Yeller again.
Because there was a channel that would play all like The Littlest Hobo, Andy Griffith's Show, all these old Leave It to Beaver, and I would sometimes switch on there if the other shows weren't getting me by with my craft dinner at lunch.
There you go. I love it. We're gonna get someone's gonna email in about Old Yeller. That's for sure. How about this from Dexta Martin, who says Old Yeller was the first movie we ever watched when we moved to Canada. How great is that? Sharon says I still remember the song for Old. Isn't that Old Yeller? Yeah. Okay, I'll save you all from it. Don't worry. Leslie says she bawled her eyes out when she read the book as a kid and then saw the movie. Still cries over it, says others. Greg says you guys are talking about when Disney was good and proper entertainment with good moral values. He says, I'm with Ron over Disney. Disney is too morally corrupt. I don't know. I think maybe because they've
been putting out some good content lately.
They started
I don't know.
reflecting real society. They started reflecting real people and real stories.
Women and minorities?
But
Get out of here.
Not everybody's happy about it. It's, you can feel the way you feel. You don't have to spend your money on going to Disneyland.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, if you're a politician, does it make sense to pick a fight with Disney? And let me say that if it plays well, then the answer might be yes. But chances are, when you're it's like picking a fight with Apple. It's like picking, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like pick some of the biggest brands in the world, and then I mean, wasn't it even interesting to see what happened with DeSantis's resignation here? I mean, when you talk about the world's biggest brands, Budweiser's up there. There's no doubt Budweiser has surrendered market share in the past.
But they're back.
Since
I mean,
that
they're
Dylan Mulvaney thing. But check this out. Tweets Ari Drennan. It's been 295 days, coming up on a year, since Bud Light sent Dylan Mulvaney, that's that influencer, that trans woman, the influencer, they sent Dylan Mulvaney one single can with her face on it, prompting Florida Governor Ron DeSantis to announce an investigation into the company. And DeSantis just ended his once promising presidential campaign quoting a Budweiser ad. In fact, he, on January 21st, a couple of days ago, tweeted, success is not final. Failure is not fatal. It is the courage to continue that counts. Citing Winston Churchill, in fact, it's from a Budweiser ad back in 1938.
Wow.
So DeSantis quoting Budweiser on his way out from the Republican race for the presidential nomination. Kind of fun.
But Bud Light doing okay. I mean, now the official beer just from UFC 297, the official beer of the UFC, the most middle-aged white male charged sport on television. So I think they're doing okay.
You know, the brand will bounce back, but it had been reported that they lost 11% of market share for months and months and months. You're talking billions of dollars.
But we're watching football the last 3, 4, 5 days. Everyone's drinking Bud Light.
Yeah.
Nobody gives a shit.
Yeah. Well, some people do, some don't. The brands will bounce back. Big brands, for the most part,
always
bounce back. I want to get to some emails here. We got some amazing ones, and we're going to follow up on a story we told you about last week. Remember when Sarah Bisbee joined us? Their family of 6. They live in the suburbs. They gave up their cars for good. Since then, they've logged 10,000 kilometers on their bikes, on their electric bikes, and wind and sleet and snow and you name it. Really remarkable stuff. Well, it prompted an email from Coreen and David, which was really great. Plus, we got an email from Ken, who's a new Real Talk patron. But first, we wanted to remind you that this episode is happening with the support of Complete Care Restoration. They're the ones that built our studio, and, well, they hope you never have to call them. They're in property restoration. They don't want to hear about a fire, a flood. They hope everybody's doing great. But the fact of the matter is, this cold snap we've seen a while ago is wreaking it's just creating some real problems. We're seeing people's pipes frozen, drains are frozen, you got some flooding, you got a mess. Don't leave it, and don't try to do it yourself. Black mold is a real concern. The team at Complete Care Restoration has certified professionals. You can learn more about them and book their services by checking out their website online. That's CompleteCareRestoration.ca. Sarah Bisbee joins us a week ago today. That was on January 15th. She had reached out to us and told us, she said she figured that our stories and our coverage and our interviews about affordability were ignoring transportation. And by the time I got 3-4 sentences into her email, I was like, she's completely right. And the email was a little too long to read on the show. I said, why don't you just come join us and tell us your story? She's a professional. She's a lawyer. She lives in the suburbs. They got 4 kids. And she said, they weren't the only ones. Their friends, people told them when they went to sell their minivan, when they went to sell their cars, go 100% car free, people thought they were a little bit nuts.
It seems absolutely wild. I recognize that. I thought it was absolutely wild before we started doing it. But it's not as difficult as it seems. And one of the key things that people, I think, miss is we look at bikes quite often as a toy. They're a form of recreation, but they can be a serious form of transportation. It's really been a life-enhancing experience for us. I get energized by being out and riding, and people will say I'm crazy, but if you're familiar with the idea of a runner's high, when you go out and run, you can get that endorphin rush. Well, when I'm out biking, you get that same endorphin rush, and at minus 35, that endorphin rush comes much faster.
I love that. If that was on our January 15th episode, if you want to check it out, if you're flirting with the idea of a car-free lifestyle, really neat stuff. And we ask her, I think, all the questions. So it prompts this email from Coreen, who writes in, Coreen and David, and says, we absolutely loved that interview with Sarah. Says Coreen, I was a road cyclist for years. My husband would never ride with me because he could never keep up on those couples rides. That a girl, Coreen. Love that. She says, in 2019, we decided to purchase e-bikes so that we could actually ride together. She says, well, then what do you do when you have a dog that travels with you? Well, then, of course, you buy a cart. Says we now spend our summers biking. Our holidays consist of traveling to places that have biking infrastructure. We spend days exploring and cycling. And she says, of course, it's got to include places with water access because we've got a water dog. Goes on to say, I look for every opportunity to use my e-bike. It's one of the best investments we've ever made for errands, groceries, or even going for like a 20 to 40 kilometer pleasure ride. Check this out. Here's her husband, David, on his bike with their beloved pup in the cart. I absolutely love that. Says, we've worn out 3 sets of tires on the cart already, and just this fall, we actually had to replace the entire cart. We're using it so much. Coreen says, while we do live in a more rural area, vehicles are still required, but I applaud Sarah and her family, as I would love to be an all-season rider if it was logistically possible. There are so many advantages. I love that from Coreen, who sent that email into talk@ryanjesperson.com. Now, I do have a bit of a gut punch update, and I want to show you this on my screen, Johnny, so let me pop over here for a second. This was a bit of a gut punch to see this. Just days after Sarah talks to us, did you see what happened to her? She tweets from her account, Mommy Pedals.
Horrible.
Yeah, she says, to the assholes who decided to trash my bike's cover and rip out my bench seat. Check out this video. She says, I hope you enjoyed your wanton destruction. Thankfully, she says, I carry extra winter gear with me so my kids didn't freeze on the way home. But that cover is their key protection against wind. She goes on to say the bench is held in by 4 long bolts. Whoever did this did it right under a surveillance camera. She says, yeah, I guess I'll report it, but it's not going to matter because the value of the property damage is too low to investigate. It messes up our life. She says the cover's not repairable. The metal poles are busted and the plastic is trashed. That from Sarah. So I just, that just kind of like, I felt the timing of that was weird as well after she had come on in advocacy.
Yeah, I'm hoping it wasn't because
I mean, I doubt it.
Somebody saw a clip or something and, I doubt that's what happened, but this is just some of the stuff you see in not just Alberta. I don't want to paint Albertans as these rednecks who go around and bust up Teslas and destroy e-bikes. Yeah. It happened. I see it in Toronto. I see it on the East Coast. I see it everywhere, and it's kind of like I think this stuff has been happening for years to all sorts of people, but it was really sad to see because she turned me into a believer because I'm someone who would, like I said, would love to bike to work. She sent me an amazing email after the show.
Oh, did she?
Because I said I couldn't get from the south side downtown to where we are here at Mercer, just across from Rogers Place. And she sent, a very detailed email. Here's exactly how to do it because I thought
she wanted you to do it.
The only way you could do it is go by Gateway or another way. She gave me an exact route to get to work. So I'm going to try it when it gets warmer. But this is just It's just horrible.
A bit of a kick in the teeth. We could have saved that for the flamethrower presented by DQ coming up on Friday, but I wanted to get to the good news story. Also, this one from Ken, and this just filled our bucket, and then we're going to get to positive reflection. So this is just a couple of things to launch you out feeling good on your Monday. We get this email from Ken. He says, Jespo, Johnny, I listen to Real Talk most weekdays, and I have been since midway through your first year. Some mornings I miss the show, but I end up listening later in the day or in the following days because life is busy. Ken, we sure appreciate that. Real Talkers, we appreciate every single minute that you give us of your valuable time. Ken says, your show, Real Talk, is the reason I canceled my subscription to Sirius satellite radio, which I had long before it was even available in Canada. He says, I signed up in 2004. He says, we all have a finite amount of time in our days and a finite budget for discretionary spending, and it took me a while to come around to the notion of paying for something that I can get for free. He says, I've always supported your sponsors. He says, I switched to Park Power back in the day. He says, I've started buying my groceries at Friesen Brothers. He says, though, Satsuma oranges kick ass, by the way. He says, thanks for mentioning those. Johnny and I, how many Satsuma oranges did we eat in December? He says, I also support your guests and their causes. I subscribe to Edify and Alberta Views magazine. I make a monthly contribution to Mark Charrington. Amazing. Remember, Mark was with us a few weeks ago talking about his advocacy. He says his segment on Real Talk really moved me, as many of your shows do. I've also purchased your limited run Woody Creek bourbon and Broken Barrel bourbon in 21 and 2022. He says, like I said, it is hard to justify spending money on something you can get for free, but I'm always happy to support local artists, content, or products, whether it's any of the ones I mentioned. So why not financially support the one program I listen to consistently? It makes good sense. Ken, we so appreciate that. He says, now, as a patron, he says, it may not guarantee me a lot. I'm going to touch on that in a second. He says, but with so much of our local content being generated from a Toronto corporate office these days, it is in all of our best interest to ensure local voices are heard and supported. Plus, decent whiskey is an added bonus. He says, thanks for all that you and your team does. I look forward to more quality content for many years to come. That from Ken. Absolutely love it, Ken. So with our Real Talk patrons, and you can check it out, but you go to ryanjesperson.com and the Connect link, and then you go down to Patreon, click on that, and that's where you can sign up. It's a way for you to support the show on a monthly basis, and we've let you know. Our patrons have allowed us to level up our lighting in here. We're going to be actually replacing our microphones in short order. That's going to be courtesy and thanks to our patrons as well. So it's better product. But we also like to make things available to you that kind of take you behind the scenes, that give you opportunities to experience things you may not otherwise. So our patrons, 10 of them were drawn at random, 10 golden tickets to attend our Real Talk Election Night VIP viewing party, kind of the who's who of Alberta provincial politics here in our studio back in May for that provincial election. We send out tokens of our thanks, like limited run Real Talk socks, which you can't buy on our website. Those were only for our patrons, and another way of us saying thank you to you. Plus other events through the year. You're first in line to sign up for all of our events, including the Golf Classic as well. And thanks to everybody that over the weekend sold out our Real Talk Pond Hockey Classic. It's coming up on Saturday, February 3rd. We're so excited about that. 24 teams, all in support of Uncles and Aunts at Large and Kids Sport St. Albert. It's going to be an amazing day at Larry Alexiak Field in St. Albert. Again, that is sold out. And so thank you to everybody that contributed. If you're still looking to get on as a sponsor or a volunteer, we do have those roles available, and you can go to the events link on our website, ryanjesperson.com. Our hearts are full when we get emails from people like Ken, and we sure appreciate your support. Every week, the first episode of every week, our friends at Kuby Renewable Energy give us a chance to take a second to guarantee that we're going to spend some time, typically on a Monday, focusing on the positive reflections, that is, presented by our friends at Kuby. A chance to essentially get rid of that negativity, right? Harness positive energy and renew our faith in humanity. And we absolutely love this email from Shalaine, who writes in and gives greetings from L.A., not Los Angeles, and not those of you in Lethbridge either. She's in Leduc, Alberta. She says, Real Talk holds, you're going to love where this goes, immense meaning and importance in my life. She says that your episodes resonate with me on a deep level, offering insights, perspectives, and valuable information that have significantly enriched my understanding of various subjects. She says Ryan's engaging discussions and thoughtful content have become a source of inspiration, making Real Talk an integral part of my daily routine. There's a twist coming. She says it's not just a source of entertainment, but a meaningful companion that contributes positively to my personal growth and well-being. Amazing, right? She goes, I can't lie to you guys. I learned about Chat GPT from Real Talk. And Johnny, she says,
Yes.
and I just asked it to write me a meaningful paragraph about how important this podcast is to me. And that's what it gave me. She says, I just burst out laughing when I was reading this.
Amazing.
She says, so even though I didn't write those words, it says everything I would want to say to Real Talk personalities on screen and personalities and staff behind the scenes. I also would have never known about Chat GPT without Real Talk, says Shalaine, which made me smile. She says, and lastly, I swear this is from me, not from Chat GPT. She says, I wanted to thank you all for the beautiful Real Talk toque. Shalaine's a patron. She was at our VIP Christmas Zoom party. We do a holiday Zoom party every year. It's exclusive for our patrons. We give away a bunch of prizes and say thank you. She says that I wanted on your special holiday episode, and I wanted to thank you. I was the second person to answer a trivia question correctly, but Ryan still gave me one, and a few of us a prize. She says, you have no idea how much that meant to me. Over the holidays, I made sure everybody I talked to knows how important and amazing the Real Talk podcast is. She says, thank you for making it this far in the email. Sorry for a long one, but thanks again for everything. And to steal a line from ChatGPT, because I can't say it better, Real Talk, not just a source of information and entertainment, but a meaningful companion that contributes positively to my personal growth and well-being. She says, I've been a faithful patron since the beginning. That from Shalaine. That made my week, man.
Little known fact, this entire show is produced by AI. I'm just a pretty face pushing
Johnny's not even
fake
real.
buttons. This is all
All
a
we're
show.
doing is reading ChatGPT scripts, and pretty soon we'll just be animated versions of ourselves. In all seriousness, you can send us an email anytime, a positive reflection, a flamethrower, or just a comment on a guest you've heard on the show by reaching out to talk@ryanjesperson.com. Positive Reflections is presented weekly by Kuby Renewable Energy. You can get a free solar quote today by visiting kubyenergy.ca. Thanks so much for everything you do to keep this show going. We promise we'll be here weekday in, weekday out with talk on news, politics, and pop culture that really matters. See you soon.
Real Talk is hosted